I left off yesterday with my bad first day and landing in Evanston, Wyoming. The Continental Divide is a line where everything west of there flows into the Pacific Ocean, and everything east eventually makes it into the Mississippi River and then into some other large body of water. So Wyoming was hot and dry. On my way from Rollin to Cheyenne, I remember anything to keep my body with energy. You see, I would get up about at daybreak. This is in early June. I'd get up when the sun came up, and I would go buy breakfast. By 9 o'clock, and then I would start out on riding my bike, and the sun would be barely creeping up. I would ride and slowly start eating and drinking liquids, and by 9 o'clock I was extremely hungry again from burning so many calories. I remember one good thing about going east is that during the summer the winds mostly come from the south or the southwest. That means I get a tailwind helping me every day on my bike. Okay, in Wyoming, from Rawlins to Cheyenne, I had a very strong tailwind, and I didn't realize it. All I knew is that I was pedaling very, very fast, and I couldn't feel any wind on my face. And I said, that's weird. So I stopped my bike, and the wind almost blew me over. As a result, for that day, instead of averaging 100 miles a day, like was my average for the whole trip of 24 days riding, I averaged 160 miles. So the strong wind added about 60 miles to my total day. I eventually went over a mountain pass to get out of Wyoming and into Nebraska. Now, Nebraska, once you hit Nebraska, the mountains get smaller and smaller. And by the way, I am still on Interstate 80, which goes from New York City to two different branches. There's an upper and lower branch of Interstate 80 that go to the west coast. Now, the road I took, the Interstate 80 through Wyoming, was the only road that went through from one end to the other. That is from the Utah-Wyoming border to the Nebraska-Wyoming border. So when I got into Nebraska, I stayed on the Interstate 80. Now this was actually the Pioneer Trail, the Oregon Trail as they called it, and also the Mormon Trail that I was on through Nebraska. And I went through North Platte River, a lot of the same areas that the pioneers went through. And the third day, I was on the freeway in Nebraska, and of course I stayed as far to the right as I could. There wasn't any debris there, so I had maybe a space of maybe 3 to 4 feet wide that I could ride in. A lot of people would honk at me for different reasons. Some of them to say hi, some of them to say, "What are you doing? You're so stupid. Get off the freeway." So about the second or third day, somebody kept honking at me from behind, and I was thinking, how annoying. Why are they have pulled off the road and they're driving behind me. And pretty soon, after ignoring him for a minute or two, I hear a siren, a police siren, and I turned around, and it was a police car with his red lights on, and his siren, motioning for me to stop. So I did stop, and I straddled my bike, and I was hoping he'd get out of his car and come up and talk to me and tell me what's going on and why he's honking at me. So I stayed there, and I think he was getting more annoyed because I didn't come back to talk to him. Because normally the policeman gets out of his car and comes to the vehicle, right? No, not right. So I look back, and he has kind of a very annoyed, angry look on his face, and motions for me to come back to his car. It took me a couple of minutes to wheel my bike to one of the upright mile markers to lean my bike against it. I couldn't lay it down because my pack was so full it would just disturb things to just turn it over on its side. So I went back and I sat in front with the highway patrol. And it was nice and cool in there. In the heat of the day, we were looking probably in the high 80s, so I was sweating a lot and I was very hot. Anyway, I sat down in there, and he goes quiet, and then he said, "What are you doing on an interstate freeway or highway? Why are you on it?" So I answered him, "Well, I'm here for the same reason vehicles and cars are. I make a lot better time. It's very slow to go on the small roads that wind through little towns, and this is best for me." And then he proceeds to say, "You are not allowed on the freeway with a bicycle. Ahead of us there is a town called North Platte, Nebraska, about 10 miles. Backwards is a small town called Hershey, about 3 miles. He says, I want you to get off the freeway and ride back to Hershey, and then you may proceed to get on a local road and not the freeway." I explained to him that losing 6 miles is about a 45-minute ride for me, which changes a lot of my timing for arriving at my destination. Again, he was not impressed with my excuses and my reasons for not wanting to go back to the little town of Hershey. Anyway, he threatens me and said, "Have you been kicked off the freeway before here? And by the way, where did you enter this freeway in Nebraska, Interstate 80? I said, "Well, wherever Wyoming meets Nebraska a few days ago, that's where I entered it." And then he said, "Have you been kicked off the freeway before by a patrolman?" And I said, "No." And he doesn't believe me. So he radios in and finds out if a bicyclist has been thrown off the freeway before. And he finds out I was not. He said, "Okay, you're clear. You have not been riding on the freeway and been told to leave it." So he says, "Now, you're going to turn around right now and go back the 3 miles. I will be patrolling up and down the same area." Anyway, so that was how to get pulled over by a police officer riding a bicycle on the freeway. Well, that'll be all for tonight.